Let's be honest, getting left behind stings. Whether it's a romantic partner, a close friend, or even someone who underestimated you professionally, that feeling of rejection hits hard. It triggers something deep inside us, a primal need to be valued, to be chosen, to be wanted. And in that moment of loss, the mind plays its cruelest trick. It convinces you that the only way to ease the pain is to chase after what was lost. But let me ask you something. Has that ever worked? Have you ever truly won someone back by pleading, over-explaining, or desperately trying to prove your worth? Here's the truth that most people don't realize. Regret doesn't come from you convincing them to return. Regret comes when they realize, on their own, that leaving was their biggest mistake. This is where most people get it wrong. They think that proving their value means reacting, fighting for attention, and making their presence impossible to ignore. But that only feeds the very thing that drove the person away in the first place. Instead, what if I told you there's a way to make them regret their decision, not by force, but by becoming someone they can't help but miss? This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about cheap tactics to make someone jealous. This is about something far more powerful: transformation. Becoming someone so undeniably strong, so deeply grounded, that the people who left can't help but question everything, and by the time they realize what they lost, you'll be so far ahead that their regret won't even matter to you anymore. So, what's the first step? How do you make them feel your absence in a way they can't ignore? Keep watching, because once you master this first principle, you'll never look at loss the same way again. 1. The power of absence. Let them feel the void. Why do people only realize what they had after it's gone? Why does the mind play tricks on us, making something that felt ordinary suddenly feel irreplaceable the moment it disappears? The answer is simple. We don't truly value what is always available. Think about the air you breathe. It's everywhere, unnoticed, until you're gasping for it. The same principle applies to relationships. The presence of a person, whether it's a romantic partner, a close friend, or a trusted colleague, becomes woven into the fabric of our daily lives. And because they're always there, they become familiar, expected, almost invisible. But the second that presence is gone, something shifts. The brain, which once overlooked their presence, now fixates on their absence. It starts replaying old conversations, revisiting past moments and questioning decisions. And this is where regret begins. But here's the thing. Most people never let absence do its work. When someone walks away from them, their instinct is to fight against that loss. They reach out, over-explain, beg for a second chance, or desperately try to remind the other person of all the reasons they should stay. But all of that only reinforces one thing. You are still available, still an option, still willing to wait. And the more available you are, the less value you hold in their eyes. It's harsh, but it's true. Human nature is wired to want what it feels is slipping away, not what is waiting patiently to be chosen again. Now, imagine the opposite. Instead of reacting emotionally, instead of chasing, instead of making your presence unavoidable, you disappear. Not in a petty, manipulative way, but in a way that forces them to feel the reality of your absence. No messages, no calls, no subtle hints that you're waiting for them to change their mind. Just silence. This is where true power lies, not in convincing them they made a mistake, but in letting them come to that realization on their own. Because when you are silent, their mind is loud. They start wondering, why haven't they reached out? Did they move on so easily? Did they ever care at all? And that uncertainty eats away at them, because here's another truth. People expect to be missed. When they leave, they assume you will react. They assume their absence will provoke desperation, sadness, or an attempt to win them back. But when you don't give them that, when you break the pattern and remove yourself completely, they don't just miss you, they start questioning everything. This is where Stoicism plays a crucial role. It teaches us that control over ourselves is the only true power we have. The ability to remain still, to master our impulses, to let go of attachment to things outside our control. That is what separates those who are ruled by their emotions from those who command them. And in relationships, this kind of self-mastery is magnetic. The person who can walk away, who does not beg for attention, who does not cling to what is lost, that person is the one who becomes unforgettable. Not because they tried to be, but because they proved they never needed validation in the first place. Absence is powerful because it creates space for reflection. It forces the person who left to sit with their decision without your interference. And here's the thing about people: when left alone with their thoughts, they begin to second-guess themselves. The human mind craves closure, but when someone walks away and you refuse to give them an emotional reaction, you deny them that closure. You leave them with unanswered questions. And those questions become the very thing that makes them regret leaving. But most people don't give it enough time to work. They break their own silence too soon. They let the discomfort of waiting push them back into old patterns, sending that one last message, hoping for a response. But every time you reach out, you reset the process. You relieve them of their doubt, confirm their decision, and place yourself back in a position of waiting. You must be willing to embrace the discomfort of silence, because silence, when held long enough, becomes the loudest thing they hear. There is a reason why scarcity creates desire. Think about anything in life that is rare: luxury cars, exclusive memberships, limited edition products. The less accessible something is, the more valuable it becomes. Relationships operate on the same psychological principle. The moment you become less accessible, the more your presence is reconsidered. And it's not just about physical absence, it's about emotional unavailability as well. If you are constantly thinking about them, stalking their social media, analyzing every move they make, you are still energetically attached to them. And that attachment leaks through in ways you might not even realize. True absence is not just about not reaching out, it's about detaching completely, letting go of the need to be seen, the need to be acknowledged, the need for closure. Because the moment you truly move on is the moment they start regretting that you're gone. This is why those who practice Stoicism have such a powerful presence in relationships. They understand that chasing after what is lost is a sign of weakness, not strength. They know that self-respect means walking away when someone no longer values them. And they recognize that the most attractive thing in the world is a person who doesn't base their worth on whether or not someone chooses them. Because here's the final truth: people don't regret losing someone who begged to stay. They regret losing someone who had every reason to chase, but instead chose themselves. And when you master this mindset, you will never fear losing anyone again, because you will know that no matter who leaves, you remain. 2. Level up. Become a better version of yourself. If there's one thing that makes people regret leaving, it's realizing that the person they walked away from has become someone they can no longer reach. The truth is, most people expect you to stay the same. They expect you to be frozen in time, still thinking about them, still waiting, still emotionally tied to who you were when they left. But when they look back and see that you've evolved into someone stronger, more confident, more successful, they don't just regret leaving, they question their entire decision. And that's the real shift. The moment they see that their absence didn't break you, but instead became the very thing that pushed you toward growth, their perception of you changes. But let's be clear, this isn't about changing yourself for them. This isn't about leveling up just to get their attention or make them jealous. That's a weak motivation, and if that's your driving force, they'll sense it. This is about becoming the kind of person who no longer cares whether they regret leaving or not. Because the irony is, the more you genuinely stop caring, the more powerful your transformation becomes. People regret losing those who move forward without hesitation. They regret losing those who take heartbreak and turn it into fuel. They regret losing those who become so deeply engaged in their own self-improvement that looking back becomes irrelevant. So what does leveling up actually mean? It's more than just going to the gym or getting a new haircut, although physical self-care is part of it. True transformation happens in 3 core areas: mind, body, and purpose. If you master these, you don't just make someone regret leaving. You make yourself so fulfilled that their regret is meaningless. Let's start with the mind. Mental strength is everything. It's what separates those who crumble under pain from those who use it to become unshakable. And this is where Stoicism becomes your greatest weapon. A Stoic does not dwell on the past. A Stoic does not obsess over things outside their control. A Stoic does not seek external validation to feel worthy. Instead, they focus on mastering their thoughts, controlling their emotions, and shaping their perspective. When someone leaves your life, your greatest mistake is making their absence the center of your thoughts. Instead, shift your focus inward. What lessons did this experience teach you? Where are the gaps in your emotional resilience? How can you become the kind of person who doesn't just survive loss, but thrives because of it? Now, the body. This isn't about revenge. It's about discipline. When you take care of your physical health, you're reinforcing self-respect. You're showing yourself that you are worth the effort, that your well-being is a priority. Exercise isn't just about looking better. It's about feeling better. It's about proving to yourself that you have control over your habits, your energy, and your confidence. And let's be honest, when someone leaves and comes back later, nothing makes them regret it more than seeing you in the best shape of your life, carrying yourself with a presence they no longer have access to. Then there's purpose. This is where most people fail. They put their entire sense of identity into a relationship or connection, so when it ends, they feel lost. But here's the reality. If you don't have a purpose beyond someone else, you will always be dependent on external validation. Find something bigger than them to focus on. Your career, your passion, your creativity, your goals, whatever it is, make it your new obsession. There is nothing more attractive, nothing more powerful than someone deeply engaged in their own mission. When you have something that drives you forward, you don't have time to look back. And when they see that, when they realize they are no longer the most important thing in your world, that's when regret truly sets in. The key to all of this is authenticity. You can't fake growth. You can't pretend to be thriving while secretly hoping they'll notice. Real transformation is silent. It's the long hours at the gym when no one is watching. It's the quiet discipline of reading, learning, and expanding your mind. It's the relentless pursuit of becoming so deeply in love with your own life that you forget why you ever cared about their opinion in the first place. Now, I want you to think about something. Who would you rather be? The person waiting, hoping, watching their social media, overanalyzing their every move, or the person who wakes up every day excited about their own life, too busy leveling up to waste time on someone who chose to walk away? Because that's the choice you have. You can either remain in the past, stuck in the cycle of regret, or you can step into your power, become the best version of yourself, and let the world, including the person who left, take notice. And if this message resonates with you, if you're ready to take back control of your life, show some love. Like this video and comment number 1 if you're committed to your own growth. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because this journey doesn't stop here. We're just getting started. 3. Move on publicly, even if you haven't fully. One of the most powerful ways to make someone regret leaving is by showing, not telling, that their absence hasn't held you back. The problem is, most people try to move on silently, waiting for the day they actually feel different before they start living differently. But here's the reality. You don't wait until you feel ready to move on. You move first, and the feelings follow. Because inaction breeds stagnation, and the longer you sit in the same emotional space, the harder it is to break free from it. The mistake most people make is assuming that healing is an internal process that needs to be completed before external change can happen. But the truth is, sometimes external movement is what forces internal transformation. Moving on publicly isn't about pretending or putting on a show. It's about intentionally stepping into a new version of yourself, even if the old version is still trying to hold on. It's about making choices that signal to yourself and to the world that you are no longer defined by who you were when they left. Because perception matters. When people see you thriving, active, engaged, and completely unbothered by their absence, it disrupts their expectations. They thought you'd be waiting, drowning in regret, lost without them. But instead, you're out there living. And that contrast is what makes them start questioning everything. The key is to make these shifts feel natural, not forced. If you suddenly flood social media with overly curated photos, excessive party updates, or passive-aggressive posts meant to show them what they're missing, it's obvious. And anything that looks like an act of desperation doesn't create regret. It reinforces their decision. Instead, focus on genuine expansion. Start new hobbies, go to new places, connect with new people. Let your presence in the world evolve organically, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you understand that life doesn't pause for anyone. The more involved you are in your own experiences, the less space there is for their absence to define you. There's something undeniable about seeing someone who used to care deeply about you completely detached, effortlessly engaged in their own world. That kind of emotional independence is rare, and it carries a certain weight, because while most people wait for closure, the strongest ones create it by moving forward. And when the person who left sees that, when they realize that you're not only surviving but thriving without them, that's when the regret begins, because suddenly they're faced with a truth they never expected. You didn't need them as much as they thought. And this is where Stoicism plays a role once again. The principle of detachment is one of its most powerful teachings. A Stoic does not base their happiness on external circumstances. They understand that emotions come and go, but self-discipline, purpose, and forward motion remain constant. So, even if part of you still feels attached, even if the emotions aren't fully gone, your actions should always align with growth, not stagnation. Because here's the paradox. By acting as if you've moved on, you actually begin to move on. And that's what people don't expect. They assume that emotions dictate action, but in reality, action can reshape emotions. Now let's talk about the moment they notice, because they will. Whether it's through social media, mutual friends, or simply sensing your shift in energy, at some point, they will realize that you are no longer emotionally centered around them. And that realization is what changes everything. Because when people leave, they often assume they still have access to you on some level, that even if they're gone physically, they still occupy space in your mind. But when that illusion is shattered, when they realize that space has been taken up by new experiences, new people, new ambitions, that's when regret doesn't just appear, it grows. But the beauty of this process is that by the time they realize what they lost, you won't be in the same place anymore. Because this isn't just about making them regret leaving. This is about you stepping into a life so full, so meaningful, that their regret no longer matters. And that is the ultimate power shift, not proving your worth to them, but proving to yourself that their presence was never necessary for your happiness in the first place. 4. The subtle shift from emotion to indifference. Regret doesn't come from dramatic displays of pain, anger, or longing. It doesn't come from proving how much you still care or showing them what they're missing. Regret happens when they realize that your emotions, once so deeply tied to them, have turned into indifference. Nothing unsettles a person more than realizing that someone who once valued them no longer reacts to their presence, their absence, or their choices. It's not hate that makes people regret losing you. It's the realization that they no longer hold power over you. Emotional control is everything. When someone leaves, they expect a reaction. Whether they left because of conflict, boredom, or personal reasons, they assume their absence will trigger some kind of emotional shift in you. They expect sadness, disappointment, maybe even anger. But the moment you show complete emotional neutrality, you break the cycle of expectation. And that shift in energy is what throws them off, because it forces them to wonder, why aren't they reacting? Why don't they seem to care? Did I never matter as much as I thought? This is where Stoicism becomes your greatest asset. Stoic relationships aren't built on emotional reactivity. They are built on control, on self-awareness, on choosing your responses rather than letting emotions dictate your behavior. A Stoic does not waste energy on what is outside their control. And once you internalize that, you free yourself from the emotional weight of their departure. Because the truth is, they don't deserve to control your emotions from a distance. They don't deserve to dictate how you feel based on their presence or absence. You take that power back by choosing neutrality. Now, neutrality doesn't mean pretending. It doesn't mean repressing emotions or acting cold just for the sake of appearing strong. It means genuinely shifting your focus away from them until they no longer affect you. It means no longer checking their social media, no longer analyzing their actions, no longer waiting for them to notice you. And here's what happens when you do that. They feel it, because energy is real. The less you think about them, the less your presence lingers in their mind. But the more you detach, the more their curiosity grows. And curiosity is what leads to regret. Imagine this scenario. They casually check in on you, expecting to see signs that you still care, maybe a hint of longing in your messages, a subtle trace of old emotions. But instead, they're met with pure, effortless detachment. You're polite but distant, engaged in your own life, uninterested in rehashing the past. No anger, no resentment, just pure, unwavering indifference. That is what makes them rethink everything. Because the truth is, people want to feel important. They want to believe they left a lasting impact. But when they see that their presence or their absence makes no difference to you, they start questioning their own worth in your life. And that's when regret sets in. Because suddenly, they aren't the one who moved on first. You are. They thought they had control by leaving, but in reality, you took control by refusing to let their departure define you. They thought you would always be emotionally available, but instead, you became unreachable. And nothing haunts people more than realizing they have no emotional hold over someone who once cared deeply about them. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, but I still feel things, I'm not indifferent yet, that's okay. Indifference is not a switch you flip overnight. It's a process, and the first step is choosing not to feed your emotions with unnecessary attention. Stop giving them mental real estate. Stop reliving old conversations. Stop looking for hidden meanings in their actions. Focus on yourself so intensely that their existence becomes irrelevant. Because the moment you shift from emotional attachment to true detachment, that's when the power dynamic changes. And if you're ready to step into that power, if you're Done letting the past control your emotions, show it, like this video, and comment number 1 if you're committed to emotional control. And if you're new here, subscribe, because mastering yourself is the greatest skill you will ever develop. 5. Unexpected encounters. How to handle them like a pro. At some point, whether you expect it or not, you will cross paths with them again. It might be in a public place, through mutual friends, or even in an unexpected message that lands in your inbox after months of silence. And in that moment, everything you've worked toward, your growth, your detachment, your emotional control, will be tested. Because this isn't just an encounter, it's a mirror, a reflection of how much you've changed, or how much you haven't. Most people ruin this moment by reacting emotionally. Either they act too eager, too invested, showing signs that the past still has a grip on them, or they swing too far in the opposite direction, putting on a forced display of indifference that comes off as unnatural and defensive. Both of these reactions reveal the same truth, that this person still has power over them. And if they can see that, if they can sense even the slightest emotional charge in your energy, then they don't regret losing you. Instead, they feel validated, knowing that they still hold space in your mind. The most powerful response is the one they least expect: effortless control, not avoidance, not forced indifference, just calm, natural presence, as if they are nothing more than another passing figure in your life. This isn't about pretending you don't recognize them. It's about showing, through your actions and energy, that their presence no longer shifts anything inside you. That is what unsettles people. Because when someone leaves, they assume they will always leave a mark, that they will always hold a piece of you, even from a distance. But when they see that they don't, when they realize that time has made them a smaller and smaller part of your reality, that's when the regret begins to take root. The key to handling these encounters is to remain centered. Your value is not in how much emotion you can show, nor is it in how much emotion you can suppress. It is in your ability to exist completely, in the present, unfazed, unaffected. If they initiate small talk, you respond with ease. If they bring up the past, you acknowledge, but don't engage. If they fish for a reaction, mentioning a new relationship, a new opportunity, something designed to spark a feeling in you, you don't bite. Because you understand the game, and more importantly, you understand that you no longer need to play it. And here's where it gets interesting. The more detached you are, the more they start analyzing your reaction. Why do they seem so calm? Why aren't they reacting? Did they move on that easily? Did I matter at all? This is what starts the cycle of second guessing, because when someone leaves, they often carry a belief that they left on their terms, that they had control. But when they return and see that you are not waiting, that you are not even thinking in terms of winning or losing, their perspective shifts. They start to wonder if they misjudged you. If maybe, just maybe, they were the one who lost something valuable. Now let's talk about what happens when they try to re-engage. Maybe it's casual at first, just testing the waters, gauging where they stand in your mind. Maybe it's an attempt to reconnect, to see if the door is still open. This is where many people make a crucial mistake. They mistake attention for intent. They assume that if this person reaches out, it must mean they want to come back. But more often than not, it's not about wanting to return. It's about wanting reassurance that they could if they wanted to. It's about ego. And if you give them that validation, if you respond in a way that confirms they still have access to you, you hand them back the power. The right way to respond, with clarity and distance. If they reach out, you acknowledge, but don't invest. You respond with kindness, but without any emotional charge. You let them see that while you are not bitter, you are also not available. That you are not carrying resentment, but you are also not looking for reconnection. This is what truly makes them regret leaving. because nothing is more unsettling than realizing that someone who once cared deeply about you no longer does, that you have become a part of their past, not because they chose to leave, but because you chose to move forward. This is where Stoicism becomes invaluable. In Stoic relationships, emotional control is not about suppression, it's about mastery. It's about understanding that emotions are real, but they do not have to dictate your actions. That you can feel something without reacting to it. That true strength is not in proving your indifference, but in embodying a state where their presence or absence makes no difference to you at all. This is the kind of energy that lingers in a person's mind, because when someone expects emotion and finds peace instead, when they expect attachment and find detachment, they are forced to confront the reality that they no longer hold the same space in your life. And that's when the full weight of regret settles in. Not because you tried to make them feel it, not because you played games, but because you did the one thing they never anticipated. You outgrew them, not in a way that was loud or forced, but in a way that was undeniable, in a way that made it clear that their departure was not the defining event of your life, that you didn't just survive it, you became stronger because of it. So when that encounter happens, when life brings them back into your path, remember this: you have nothing to prove. Your growth, your confidence, your peace, they speak for themselves. The only thing you need to do is show up as the person you've become, completely unshaken. And in that moment, while they are trying to figure out if they made a mistake, you will already know the answer. Because the truth is, you never needed their regret. What you needed was the version of yourself that you became in their absence. And that is worth more than anything they could ever offer you now. 6. Let time work in your favor. Regret is not something that happens overnight. It doesn't strike immediately after they walk away. In fact, at first, they might feel relief. They might believe they made the right choice. They may even seem happier, more at peace, as if leaving you was the best decision they could have made. And that's where most people make the critical mistake. They react too soon. They assume that because there is no visible sign of regret in the beginning, there never will be. And in that assumption, they act impulsively. They reach out. They try to force a reaction. They look for ways to trigger a response, hoping to speed up a process that can only unfold with time. But here's the truth. Regret is slow. It builds in silence. It is something that creeps in when they least expect it, often when they have nothing left to distract them. And the only way to ensure that regret fully takes hold is by doing nothing. By allowing time to do the work that no words, no actions, no forced displays of happiness can ever accomplish. Because people do not regret losing you when you are still there, lingering in the background, subtly reminding them of your presence. They regret losing you when they are forced to sit with their decision, completely alone. Time is the most powerful weapon you have, but it only works in your favor if you let it. If you resist the urge to intervene, to check in, to remind them of what they lost. Every time you break your own silence, every time you reach out, even in the smallest way, you reset the process. You relieve them of their doubt. You remind them that they still hold a place in your mind, and that reassurance weakens the effect of time. But when you stay silent, when you disappear so completely from their world that they have no idea what you're doing, how you're feeling, or if you've moved on, that's when time begins to work for you, not against you. Regret isn't triggered by your presence. It's triggered by your absence. Because the mind plays tricks on people. It romanticizes what it no longer has access to. It starts to replay memories with a different perspective. The flaws they once focused on begin to fade. The reasons they left start to feel smaller. The comfort they took for granted becomes something they suddenly miss, and all of this happens without you saying a single word, without you having to do anything but wait. But waiting doesn't mean pausing your life. It doesn't mean sitting in stillness, counting the days until they realize what they lost. That is not patience. That is emotional stagnation. The real strategy here is to keep moving forward so relentlessly, so completely, that by the time they do realize their mistake, you are already so far ahead that their regret no longer matters. That is the ultimate shift. Not just making them regret losing you, but reaching a place where their regret is irrelevant. Most people don't have the discipline for this. They think they do. They think they can remain silent, focus on themselves, and let time take its course. But then doubt creeps in. They see that the other person appears happy, unbothered, unaffected. They assume that means they don't care, and that assumption makes them break their own silence, reach out, seek closure, or worse, seek validation. But what they don't realize is that regret does not show itself immediately. It reveals itself slowly, in moments of quiet, in times of solitude, in the spaces where distractions can no longer keep it away. There will come a day when they look back and wonder if they made a mistake. It might be months from now, it might be years. It might happen when they see you living a life that no longer includes them, or when they are alone in a moment of reflection, realizing that the connection they once had with you is something they will never experience again. And when that day comes, it won't be because of something you said. It won't be because of some game you played. It will be because you did exactly what most people can't. You allowed time to work for you. The hardest thing in the world is to trust the process, to trust that detachment is the only real path to making them feel your loss. But once you master this, once you truly embrace patience as your strongest strategy, you will see the results in ways you never expected. And by the time they finally feel the full weight of regret, you will no longer need it. If you're ready to step into this mindset, to truly take control of your own emotions and let time work for you, show it. Like this video and comment number 1. If you're committed to detachment, and if you're new here, subscribe, because learning this level of emotional control will change everything in your life. 7. The inevitable moment when they try to come back. At some point, it happens. The message, the call, the sudden, unexpected attempt to reconnect. Maybe it's casual, just a simple, "Hey, how have you been?" Or maybe it's more direct, a confession of regret, an attempt to revisit what once was. Whatever the form, the intention is the same. They are testing the waters, trying to gauge whether they still have a place in your life, whether their absence truly mattered, whether they still have access to you. And this is where everything you've worked for is put to the test. Because how you handle this moment will determine everything, not just their perception of you, but more importantly, your perception of yourself. Most people, when faced with this situation, make one of two mistakes. They either welcome the person back too easily, driven by nostalgia, unresolved emotions, or the longing for validation, or they react out of bitterness, using the opportunity to throw past pain in their face, to make them feel guilty, to try and prove how much they were hurt. Both of these reactions give away your power. One tells them that you were waiting all along, that despite all your growth, you still place them at the center of your emotions. The other tells them that you still carry anger, which means you still care more than you're willing to admit. Neither response aligns with the person you have become. The most powerful way to handle this, with calm indifference. Not coldness, not rudeness, but a simple, effortless detachment that makes it clear that their return does not shift your world in any significant way. You acknowledge, but you do not invest. You listen, but you do not engage in emotional revision. of the past. You do not seek closure because you already gave it to yourself. This is what truly unsettles them, realizing that while they were stuck in their own cycle of regret, you were moving forward without hesitation. That their presence, once so significant, is now nothing more than a passing detail in your story. This is where the philosophy of Stoicism becomes essential. A Stoic does not react impulsively. A Stoic does not base their decisions on fleeting emotions. They assess reality as it is, without illusion, without false hope, without the need to manipulate or control. And when someone from your past reaches out, the most Stoic response is to meet them exactly where they stand, not with longing, not with resentment, but with a quiet recognition that their return changes nothing. But what if they truly want to come back? What if their regret is real, if they are asking for a second chance? This is where self-awareness matters more than anything else. You have to ask yourself, are they returning because they genuinely see your value now, or are they returning because they feel the void you left? Because those are two very different things. One is rooted in newfound respect and appreciation. The other is rooted in loneliness, in the discomfort of losing something they once took for granted. And if it's the latter, taking them back does not serve you. It only serves their temporary discomfort. The decision is always yours. If you believe in rebuilding, if you believe that time has truly changed both of you, then that is a choice you make with clarity, not with desperation. But if their return is simply a result of their own unprocessed emotions, then you owe them nothing. Because the truth is, most people don't regret losing you. They regret losing their access to you. And there is a difference. One is about you. The other is about them. No matter what, the most important thing to remember is this: you do not need their regret. You do not need their validation. You do not need them to see your worth, because the person you have become was never about them in the first place. And when you understand that, when you truly embrace it, you will realize that their return was never the victory. The victory was always in how much you grew in their absence. And that is something they can never take away from you. At the end of it all, the real lesson isn't about making them regret leaving. It's about realizing that their regret is no longer your concern. Because if you've done everything right, if you've embraced absence, leveled up, moved on publicly, mastered indifference, handled unexpected encounters with grace, let time work in your favor, and responded to their return with quiet confidence, then by now you've reached the most powerful place you could ever be: complete detachment. The truth is, the person you were when they left no longer exists. You've evolved. You've grown into someone they no longer recognize, someone they can't reach in the same way. And that, more than anything, is what creates the deepest regret. Not just the realization that they lost you, but the painful awareness that they can never get you back in the way they once had. But by the time they see it, by the time they feel it, it won't matter to you anymore. Because the true victory isn't in their regret, it's in your transformation, in becoming someone so completely fulfilled, so deeply engaged in your own growth, that their presence or absence no longer defines your world. That's the real shift. And once you understand this, once you embody it fully, you will never fear losing anyone again, because you will know with absolute certainty that no one who walks away determines your worth. Only you do. And that is a power no one can take from you.